All right, everyone should have gotten a notice that this meeting is being recorded. So again, welcome to our third online workshop for aquatic invasive species here in Minnesota. Our topic here today is strategic planning and evaluation. We've got Chelsea Blanke with the Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council talking about the implementation of the Minnesota Management Plan for Invasive Species. We've got Justin Townsend with Ramsey County talking about developing metrics and evaluating outcomes. He'll also talk a little bit about strategic planning. And then you've got Doug and I talking about the statewide metrics template, the summaries and updates to that template, and then a good amount of time for discussion around how people are planning and evaluating their programs. So really looking forward to that discussion here today. So with that, I will move it on over to Chelsea, if you would like to kick us off here today.
All right. Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to get my screen shared here. Can you see that all right again?
Looking good, Chelsea.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much, Tina and Doug, for having me here, and to all of you for joining to talk about Minnesota's management plan for invasive species. So my name is Chelsea Blanke. I'm a researcher at the University of Minnesota, and I'm currently working on invasive Phragmites. There's actually a statewide coordinated control effort going on for invasive Phragmites, or common reed. So if you haven't heard about that, please check out our website at minfrag.org. There's resources that may be available to help with control. And we need more eyes on the ground if we're going to be able to keep invasive Phragmites from taking over in Minnesota. So we're working with the DNR and many other partners at the local level, and the goal is to reverse and slow the spread of that species. I'm also supporting the Use Ecological Restoration Training Collaborative. So if you haven't heard of that, you can search online for Ecological Restoration Training, UMN, and you'll find some free webinars and kind of an online course that provides a really nice framework for restoration. And that's designed for those who are doing on-the-ground restoration work, which some of you might be involved in. So those are just a few things that I'm working on right now that might be relevant to you all, but we're here today to talk about strategic planning, and now specifically Minnesota's management plan for invasive species. So my connection to all of this is through my previous role with the Minnesota DNR and currently with the Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council, or MISAC, which is a multi-organization partnership focused on invasive species in the state. And in the last couple of years, I coordinated a major revision of the plan on behalf of MISAC and DNR. So that's kind of why this is coming up in this conversation today. So the earlier initial version of the Minnesota Invasive Species Management Plan was developed in 2009 by MISAC. And invasive species management in Minnesota has come a long way since 2009. So if you're interested, there's actually a short summary on the MISAC website, mininvasives.org, that describes some of the progress that was made in invasive species management since that time. So that might be especially interesting to those of you who are new to invasive species management here. But just in the last couple of years, from about 2020 to 22, the plan received a major update and was approved by the Federal Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. A lot of different people and groups were involved in the revision. Those that served on the plan revision subcommittee of MISAC were the most heavily involved. So these included the DNR, Minnesota Department of Agriculture, Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, tribal natural resource agencies such as Fond du Lac Band and the Grand Portage Bands of Lake Superior, Chippewa, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the 1854 Treaty Authority, the National Park Service, Minnesota Sea Grant, Minnesota Nursery Landscape Association, and the Wild Rivers Conservancy. So a lot of different groups that were involved heavily in revising this plan. And then the revision process also included multiple rounds of input and review by the fuller MESAC membership, tribal representatives, and other invasive species partners throughout the state. So some of you may have weighed in on the content of this revision. So before we go any further, I just want to get a sense of all of your familiarity with the plan. So we're going to do another little poll here. If I could have Tina or Doug launch that poll. And I can't see the results, I don't think, but you can use that to indicate your familiarity with the plan. So some of you may have just be hearing about this for the first time. Some of you may have kind of skimmed a few sections. And some of you may even be using it to help guide some of your work or weighed in on that revision. So take just a moment to complete that poll.
You should be able to see the responses in the chat. Are you
Okay,
able to
I can
see those?
them now.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Awesome.
Yeah, I just had to move some windows around. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Tina and Chelsea, I'm not able to read the full text of the options. And it's not letting me resize the chat window. I don't know, maybe if you stop sharing your screen for just a minute while we do this?
Sure, that's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Did that help?
Nope, sorry.
Oh.
It's okay.
I don't have any technical control.
I think
there should be a scroll box.
I can read the options too for the in order that they're appearing, if that's helpful.
Okay, it's actually showing in the results. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see that now. Actually, the question doesn't have the whole all the options. Yeah, I see that now.
Yeah, if you're entering the poll via the chat, that it doesn't show the whole question or the whole response. But if you have Teams, it actually has a separate pop-out that shows all the questions laid out. So apologies for that. Again, new to polls today.
No worries. Yeah, I really appreciate this is really interesting to see. Really appreciate the participation in this. So it looks like there's a pretty wide spread of like familiarity with the plan, but kind of leaning towards being less familiar with it than more so. And that's kind of what we expected, I guess, since this was something that it was first written in 2009. We're really hoping to kind of like give it some new life right now. And so hopefully this presentation today kind of gives you a sense of kind of how it can be used in your work and things you might want to look for in there.
You want to start sharing your screen again there, Chelsea, before you move on.
All right.
And I will put the link to the plan in the chat.
Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about strategic planning today, and the Minnesota Management Plan for Invasive Species is a great place to start. So from here on, I'll just refer to it as the plan or the state plan. And the purpose of this plan is it's really a very big picture framework to help coordinate and guide efforts to prevent the introduction, reduce the spread, and promote the management of invasive species in Minnesota. Its scope includes both terrestrial and aquatic invasive species. I know some of you do terrestrial invasive species work as well. And very importantly, participants involved in implementing the plan may be any entity in the state willing to do so. So implementation of this plan is voluntary for most Minnesota organizations that work on invasive species, but successful implementation depends upon participation from partners like you all. It's critical that we work together in our efforts. We know that invasive species aren't limited by state or county lines, and the work that you all do protects other parts of Minnesota and beyond. In many cases, I expect that many of you will find that as you start to get more familiar with the plan, that you're already implementing various aspects of it. And so I'm going to spend the rest of my time here sort of talking about how you can plug in to helping to implement this plan. And I imagine too that some of you could actually point to your participation in this workshop and to the plan itself when you're communicating with your county boards, your constituents, et cetera, to sort of show how the work that you're doing fits into the broader picture, and maybe even make a case for additional investments to support filling important gaps as needed. So you could potentially use this plan as a justification in support of the important work that you're doing. So there are a few new or heavily updated sections that may be particularly helpful in your own strategic planning. So these include the implementation tables, which list many different actions and that organizations can take toward prevention, early detection, management, and leadership. There's also a single page listing some key priorities for action where current work is being done or where there are obvious important gaps that folks are currently working on or see as major priorities to work on. There's an updated section on invasive species threats to Minnesota. MISAC went through an involved process to rate species based on their threat level. So those species ratings have been incorporated into the plan. And there's also a new section on gaps in invasive species authorities, funding, and programs. So all of these new sections provide various actions or highlight important strategies or species that you can take a look at and use in your own strategic planning. There's also a couple of new sections I want to highlight that are completely new to this iteration of the plan that provide some really important context for invasive species management, which you all might be interested in checking out. There's a section on tribal consultation before implementation and cultural perspectives. There's a new section on climate resiliency and invasive species management. And there's a nice summary of current efforts. So for those of you that are new to invasive species management in Minnesota, you can check out the programs and regulatory authorities section to kind of get a sense of what's being done currently and by whom. I want to mention that there's a short guide for implementation on the MISAC website, describing how folks like you and any organizations interested in working on invasive species can plug in. So if you go to mininvasives.org/state plan, you can see this part of the page here has this guide for partner implementation that you can take a look at. And you'll also see that summary of progress during the life of the first iteration of the plan is available right here too. So I know we all have limited time and some of you wear many hats. So here are just some quick recommendations for sections to check out if you only have a certain number of hours. So if you only have an hour, I'd recommend just sort of skimming the table of contents. My dog's gonna start working now, I'm sorry, everyone. I'll try to work through it. So if you just have an hour, I'd recommend just quickly skimming the table of contents, strategies under each major plan element, and the priorities for action sections. So this will kind of give you a sense of where your work fits in with the bigger picture. If you have 2 hours, add in a quick review of those implementation tables and invasive species threats to Minnesota. If you have 4 hours, I would say give those sections I already listed a full read, along with the section on essential needs for plan implementation and those sections I already mentioned with important context for forward-thinking invasive species management. So, and then of those 1, 2, or 4 hours, whatever you have, I just suggest saving 20 to 50% of the time you have to highlight the aspects that you're working on or want to be working on, pull them into a document, and just jot down a couple of SMART goals related to them. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. And so there are other ways to kind of do this strategic planning around the plan, but this is just sort of a simple suggested approach. I think the next couple of talks are going to provide some helpful examples and well thought out approaches as well. And lastly, if you only have 30 minutes, I would say do this. So MESAC is going to be conducting a survey of invasive species organizations this year to support the first ever evaluation of implementation of the state plan. So the survey is going to include all of the plan's strategies and actions and allow partners to indicate what they're working on to help everyone kind of get a sense of how we're doing at implementation as a state as a whole. And MESAC is planning on conducting this evaluation every 4 years. So this is the first evaluation survey. It will provide an important baseline that we can all look back on and compare to. And I'll be sharing a link to that survey out with folks like you and other partners in the state as well in the next week or so. So just take 30 minutes to complete that, and it will really help to communicate with others what you're working on, give you a chance to weigh in on how things are going, and help you get some familiarity with the plan as well. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chelsea. Any questions about the state plan? Or how?
I don't see any questions in the chat yet, Tina, so I'm monitoring that. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Anyone want to chime in? If for those that have used it I've used it to guide my work. There's at least 2 people that said that. How have you used it? If you're willing to share. Well, that's okay too. I know it's a big plan. So Chelsea, I really appreciate how you kind of gave us some guidelines on if you have this amount of time, you can read this amount of the plan. So hopefully people can take that advice and take a look at the plan after this meeting. Justin.
Chelsea, can you talk a little bit about the public engagement or engagement you all did with professionals to reach these goals?
Yeah, so I guess we during the revision, we did a lot of working with, I guess we tried to reach as many organizations as we possibly could in the state that were working on invasive species in some way to get feedback on the plan. So there was a survey that went out, and we had like kind of listening sessions at the Upper Midwest Invasive Species Conference, and that kind of thing. I guess I think we had multiple rounds of we had that survey, and then we also had the kind of a draft of the plan go out to partner organizations throughout the state. So that's kind of how the whole thing came together, and yeah, working then very closely with a lot of folks in MESAC.
Yeah, and I'll just build on Chelsea's comments there in the question. When the plan was first developed, we held a workshop in Roseville in 2007, and we gathered input on the framework for the overall plan, and about 70 individuals from agencies, including federal, state, tribal, business, and nonprofits attended that and helped us then really put some meat on the bones of the original framework. And that was the plan that then went forward and was approved in 2009 by the AIS Task Force, like Chelsea had mentioned.
Thanks, Doug, for that context.
Yeah, and I guess I can add to that. So the plan itself is more, it doesn't have like operational benchmarks. So one of the major, I guess, priorities and that you'll see in there is kind of is really about kind of what we're talking right now, is for organizations to kind of help use that plan to help generate their own kind of strategic goals and that kind of thing. So this is a really great opportunity to do some outreach about it and get the word out about it. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and many of you as county coordinators should have received some updates recently about the plan. You even got the attachment of those guidelines on how to implement the plan. So you should have all the resources you need, but do feel free to reach out to us or Chelsea if you want those emails resent. All right. Well, thank you, Chelsea. We'll move on to our next presenter.
Thanks, everyone.
Justin, take it away.
I'll jump on here. So, yeah, thanks, Chelsea, for all that. That was excellent stuff, and it really is a good plan. And I want to build off that a little bit, make this a little as cohesive as I can of a talk, because I know I did, and several others did look at that in the old version as a benchmark for how we should be designing, or at least at the very least, how to make it coherent enough that people will understand it. Because as I'm sure you all on the call are aware, as you do this, it's difficult to try to get across what exactly you're saying. So I don't know if I don't want to share in too much, but Drew was supposed to be here from Carver County, wasn't able to make it, but he has an excellent plan. So I did kind of want to talk on his strategic planning, and then that'll kind of lead into my metric stuff. So apologize, this is a little last minute, little rambly. Feel free to interrupt me. And also want to apologize. This is a lot of words, but there's no way around that. So let me share his document.
And thank you, Justin, for filling in at the last minute there. Yeah, Drew wasn't able to make it to present today, so Justin's pinch hitting on strategic planning.
Won't be perfect, but it does all fit together. So, big picture strategic planning, I guess, what is strategic planning, right? How is it different than your day-to-day planning? Why are all these things different? I didn't have a great concept of that. Learn a little bit in college, right? And you get a background for it. You see these things. You see them done really well in private business. I think a lot of times, and that's the frame of reference that I had. But it didn't quite know how to take that into the AIS realm and natural resource realm in general. It's just kind of, we know what we're doing. We've got our plan. We want to restore this area or prevent these species, etc. And I'm not a huge planner. So all of this is coming from a person that finds it very difficult to sit down and do any planning. Like, just let's stop talking and let's go do stuff. So I hope that little bit of background helps. I'm not preaching here. I'm just telling you my struggles that hopefully you all can take something away from it. So here's Drew's strategic plan, and ours are quite similar. We talked a little bit when we were developing both of ours. I think we had the same idea in mind. The first thing that you want to do with any of this is create an objective, or what mine's called is a mission statement. And I'll show you that one in a little bit after this too. Drew's got a great one here. It covers a whole lot of the pieces that you want. And I think my favorite part of his objective is in here somewhere, I lost it, but taking that holistic approach to AIS management and lake management in general, not just looking at it from the sense of how can we kill as much invasive species as we can, establish a holistic approach to AIS prevention and management. So we're not just using the tools that we know, we're inventing new ones, we're using things from other organizations or other sectors, if you will, to try to come up with our plan of how we're going to do this. So the first thing is to create that mission or objective, because everything you do beyond this, all of your goals should then be to meet this objective. Otherwise you get scope creep, right? You just, oh, the next shiny little thing, you go out and you want to do that. Also, and I would point back to Chelsea's document to the plan, the state plan, use that as a frame of reference too. How does your objective help meet state goals? What little piece can you bite off to help feed into that? Because as we all know, natural resources isn't going to happen without all of us plugging into and helping that. There's some introductory stuff. He's got a lot of great background information in here. I really encourage you to take a look at that URL. But down to number 5, I think is where we're at. Yeah. So this is where you get into the meat of it in terms of AIS. What are you going to do? And so he has 2 big goals that I saw in the plan. And again, I don't want to misrepresent. It's not my plan, but here's what I took away from it. Prevention and management strategies. So to meet that objective of taking a holistic approach, one step he's going to take is prevention, and then the other one is management. As he says in there, management's difficult, so better to hit it on the prevention side. We all know that. So touching on that, well, what are we actually going to do in AIS prevention? This is where you get into boots on the ground, shovel ready, whatever term you want to use. This is what we're actually going to do. And he has all of that in there. And it really depends on what you see as important. And again, I would point back to the larger state plan. That's a great place to start. But you might have pressures on you from other lake associations, the other county board members, whatever pressures that you have, that's the place to put in that too. Or that's the place, here's the place to put that in. There was one other, number 6, I wanted to touch on. Sorry, I'm scrolling. Hope nobody gets seasick. Here we go. Management projects. So again, he mentions that prevention is the most efficient and costly, but here's some things that we can do in terms of management to actually make a difference. Phragmites, we can partner with that and various counties and districts on doing that. Goldfish, and even planning to plan, putting in your strategic plan that we need to create a plan makes that happen. I think the piece with strategic planning in general is a bit of what Chelsea talked about, that if it's not in the plan, it's not getting funded. I mean, from coming from an SWCD perspective and the county perspective, if we don't have it in a plan, it's not going to happen. It just, there's no funding source for it generally. So putting it in the plan, putting your priorities in there is extremely critical, and having those objectives or those goals that meet your objective or your mission is critical. So there's Drew's plan, again, excellent resource. I'm gonna stop sharing that one and I'm gonna go over to mine. And hopefully, again, speak a little bit more coherently because I know my plan a little bit better. Window. Trying to find, it's a Word document. Here we go. Teams is not showing my Word doc. Let me try this. X. Sorry, I know this is annoying, but I'm just gonna share my whole screen. Okay. Sorry, here we go. Okay, so strategic plan, again, I have my strategic plan, my work plan for the year, and my budget and my measurements all in one document here. So I'll just really quick go through basically the same as Drew's. We got a plan to prevent, respond to, and manage AIS. Big picture stuff with strategic planning, I wanted to mention, plan out at least 5 years. I don't think anything in natural resource moves any faster than that. That's just my opinion. I think 5 years is a good way to go. 10 years, you might get out too far, too much staff turnover, too much change. So 5 years seems to work pretty well. Your work plan can change and adapt. If you do change it, make sure it's for a good reason. Don't just follow the winds and the whims of whoever happens to be. And that's why I was asking that question to Chelsea about public input. You for sure want to take that public input, and we want to be as reactive to our constituents as possible. Sure, but we cannot follow every whim that somebody might have, especially if it doesn't speak back to the mission and the objective. And this again is where, kind of like Chelsea was saying, provide you some cover. Also, make sure, this seems obvious, but make sure your budget speaks to your plan. I've seen a couple and that the money didn't follow what the mission was. So it's very important. It's easy to lose track of that. And then very smart person told me one time, and it's so very simple again, but measure only what you plan to change. There's a lot of things that we could do that we could measure and would be super fun to get out there and do. But if you're not going to do anything about it, then don't bother. So here we are, my strategic plan. I've got mine laid out because my attention span is probably shorter than Drew's. I've got mine laid out like this. Let me click out one more time. There we go. So our mission, prevent the spread, protect the resource, critical habitats, mention all the nice little keywords in there. Then all of my objectives are going to stay solid over those 5 years. So prevent, detect early, and minimize infestations. So those are always going to change, or always stay the same. The strategies, those might change a little more often, but those have stayed static for 3 years now. And I see no reason to change those at this time. Nothing has changed enough for those strategies to change. Now, what has changed is my measurable goals, and where we get into the measurement and metrics of what I'm doing. So here are what I call tactics. I had a lot of people from the corporate world, 3M, Medtronic. I'm lucky enough to be in that area where there's a whole lot of C-suite level people, and they have done these for decades and decades. So call it what you want, but this is what people told me to call it. You got your mission, your strategies, and your objectives, your strategies, and then your tactics. Your tactics is what you're actually going to measure and change over the year. So with that, you can see that the tactics feed into the strategies feed into the objectives, and the objectives help us meet our mission. What I was going to talk about here, originally out of the strategic plan part of it, now you're starting to talk about measurement. So there's my budget. All of these items talk to what tactics I'm doing. And sometimes your budget can be a measurement in and of itself. So I have a reserve fund that I keep for that early response to new infestations. One of my goals is just to keep that fund up in the $50,000 range. A measurement might also be reducing or increasing a line item. So for me, you can see my budget is right around that $100,000. That's our allotment. Generally, lake associations, others have been feeding into that with additional dollars for watercraft inspections. So one of my goals is to increase that watercraft inspection budget line item, or create a new line item. So I'm sure a lot of you know I'm into the eDNA thing and all these new and cutting edge technologies. So I want to create a line item that is new and innovative stuff, and have a line item in there. So as these things keep coming our way that we don't even know exist right now, we can adapt to that, and we can take those in. Chelsea took my thunder on SMART goals, so I'll just go over that one. I really like SMART goals. I think that's just the easiest way to think of it. There's a whole lot of other goal type, SMART goal type things you can use to think of. But SMART goals is really simple, and it just really helps you. It's back to that. Why are you measuring it? What are you going to change? What are you going to do about it? So into my measurements. So at the beginning of every year, I take my tactics and I put them into this sheet here. And this is where it gets kind of wordy. Again, I apologize. I have my measurement in there of this is what we're actually going to measure. So this is again where I say, be careful about what you're saying. Measuring zebra muscle, and I've been down this road before, so that's why I mentioned this one, is measuring zebra muscle density. Super cool. I'm not going to do anything about it right now. There's no treatments. There's nothing going on that I can do right now. That's a MACER thing. Leave it to MACER. But what I can do is create risk maps. What I can do is have the decon unit out. That's something I can control. So I can have that out for at least 160 hours. And somebody can argue with me about that measurement and say, well, you should be measuring the number of decons you're using or decons you're doing. Yes, that's kind of an internal goal that we have, and we're measuring that, but I can't necessarily completely control that. It might rain, the decon unit might break down, whatever it happens to be, but I can get that decon unit out there and doing its educational purpose for at least 160 hours. Then on the backside, I can do some other goals, and stretch goals, we'll call them. Also put in here a note to myself, that's all those items in red. Don't let the fear of not being able to measure your success keep you from making a goal. So I take this as a for instance. We've gone back and forth with the AIS task force for a long time on what isn't a good goal. You know, we want to have 10,000 inspections per year. Okay, great. Or we want, what we should be saying is we want to get the most risky boats. I can't necessarily measure that. So what can we measure as a goal towards that goal? Also goes along with don't be afraid to stretch yourself. There's plenty of goals that I've had in here that I just didn't have time for, but I wanted somebody to know that they were important. I wanted to put them in there so that they got a budget. Back to that, circling back to that budget piece, I do have the budget impact in here as well, and the rationale. So again, somebody can come at me and say, I don't believe in your measurement, you have the wrong measurement. And I can say, well, look at the rationale. This is what we're doing. And I will report back to you on that. If you don't believe that, I really can't help you with it. But again, back to my question on public engagement, when you ask the public, you're going to get many opinions, and they might not always be well informed. And so being able to cover yourself a little bit with, well, this is the best I can come up with that I can do, and having some rationale in there has really helped me in telling people, I hear you, but this is what I can do for you. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but sometimes the plan can just be to plan. So updating launches, now it's going to be going on 10 years that we've had our signs out in the next couple of years, and we've done all of our stenciling. I just want to get back out there, and I know my boat launch as well, but what's the plan? What's the plan for replacement? We're out of that initial build out phase, and we're into what does maintenance look like? What new technologies are available for our boat launches that weren't? What new signs are available? Again, here, leave some room for stretch goals. So this is where I use language sometimes in my measurements of at least, or 1 or 2 or more if possible. So use some language in there to say, I know I can get 1 done. I think I can get 1 done. I would like to do more. Again, depends on funding. And that's helped me many times to say, I would love to do more of these. I don't have the funding for it. And then people say, well, it's in your plan. Let me help you out. We'll help you fund it. Few more just tidbits I have, and I'll wrap this up pretty quick. But some goals are reoccurring for the sake of continuity and compatibility. So with this one, point intercept surveys, we do point intercept surveys with and scuba diving zebra mussels searches / now starry stonewort searches. We want to do those year over year. We don't want to change that. We need those for comparability. We need that because it's a best practice. So some of these tactics we can just keep going with, and we don't need to change it. Some I leave purposely vague too. So this one's a good example. Completion of eDNA detection research in cooperation with some organization. So pretty much every organization in the alphabet soup of AIS people is doing something in the realm of eDNA. And so leaving that vague enough to say we will help wherever it makes sense to help allows us to help out existing programs where they need it, help out programs that don't even exist when the plan is written, but may be funded later on. But again, it's kind of a goal towards a goal. Like our goal is to help out with their goal so we can meet our goal. And those have been some of the most fruitful metrics for us, is just we're out there, we're participating, we're there. And that is what's helping us meet our goals. I mentioned the rationale piece again. So again, just to wrap up with it all, one other piece mentioned, Chelsea mentioned it a little bit too, but there might be pieces in your goals and your strategic plan, again, that don't seem like they necessarily directly apply to aquatic invasive species or whatever you happen to be measuring and talking about. But things like diversity is something that I would like to see more, and I need to put that in this as I update it. So we want to see more diversity out there. You know, and that's one where maybe on the face of it, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's directly related to aquatic invasive species, but when you look at especially Ramsey County and the wider metro, if you don't have signs in Hmong and Karen, if you're not reaching out to every community possible, then you're missing somebody and you're not really truly meeting your aquatic invasive species goals. So putting some in there that your county might see as important to them, that again, it speaks to a larger goal of the county, might be important too. And I think it's good to put those at whatever level of planning you're doing. It's important to have those. So apologies again. I'm going to stop sharing as quick as I can because I hate when this happens. There we go. So that's what I have. Welcome any questions, comments, concerns, or otherwise.
Thank you so much, Justin. A lot of information for people to digest. Any immediate questions or thoughts for Justin? A question from Ariana in the chat. When you're putting the plan together, how did you solicit and include feedback from your task force?
Yeah, and I continue to do this. So I hold a meeting in fall to go over the previous year's goals and measurements and where we ended up with all that. And I try to be very, very honest with what we didn't get done. Then with that knowledge in mind, we come back in spring and I'll ask them again, here's what we got done last year. Now, knowing that, here's what I plan on doing this year. Does anybody want to add or eliminate anything? And lucky enough for us, we did this back in 2019, so pre-COVID, and we were still doing a whole lot in person, and a lot of those relationships were made. And now I can host a lot of that online. And I know it's not great for those who might be trying to do this in 2020 or 2022. But I think putting something out there, if I had any advice on that, get as many people as you have. I'm sure you have the connections there, but come to the table with what you want. It can be tweaked, but you're the professional, you know what you're doing.
Thanks for that, Justin. And there's a bunch of requests in the chat for you to share your plan. So if you have a link to that online, otherwise you can send it to me and I can send it out to everyone.
I'll send you the latest one. I don't know if that's made it online yet, so I'll send you the latest one. And actually, I don't, let me look through it and make sure it's finalized.
Excellent. So I can share that one. I can share Carver's plan. I can share the BSAC plan with all of our contacts so that you have those resources. And you can always consult with Justin, right, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually I have my little contact me at the end, but I'll put it in the chat for those that don't have my phone number and email. And I'm happy to share. I'll share the Word document, steal it. use whatever you want, just change the letterhead is all I ask.
Thanks, Justin. Any other thoughts about strategic planning and developing some metrics and measures? All right. Well, then we will move on to our break. We'll take a break now. Let's take a little bit of a longer break here. We'll come back at 11:10. And then Doug and I will be presenting about our statewide metrics template and getting feedback from you on how it's working. We're really looking forward to that discussion and making it something that everyone can get the most use out of. So really looking forward to that. And we'll see you back here at 11:10. Everyone should stand up and move away from your screens. right, welcome back, everyone. If you want to give me a little thumbs up or other reactions, let me know you're back, or turn your camera on to let me know you're back in the meeting. Feel free to do that. A few hands and thumbs up coming in. We'll give people another minute or so to get back at their desk.
Tina, I'm back.
Yay!
Oh my goodness. Unbelievable.
Sorry you were having some technical issues, but I'm glad you're back, Doug.
Screen went black. Had to do a force shutdown on my computer.
Well, right on time for the break, and now you're back, so we're good to go, right?
I guess.
All right, well, we'll get started again here. So we've got our last presentation of the day, which is myself and Doug talking about the statewide metrics template, the summary and updates to that template. So I'll be doing the first part, and then I'll toss it over to Doug to talk numbers. So as you're all aware, the Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Aid has existed since 2014. And in about 2016, let me take you back to the year 2016, where there was an Aquatic Invaders Summit held in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And one of those breakout sessions at that was to determine what kind of metrics counties and others should be tracking related to aquatic invasive species prevention and management. The aid had been around for, about 2 seasons, a season and a half. So people started asking, how are the AIS prevention aid dollars making a difference? What are the most important metrics that counties and their partners could track year to year? And how do we create a resource that both supports the unique activities that counties are doing, but is also consistent statewide without creating undue burden in more reporting requirements? And so the answer to those questions was to ask the counties. So we held some breakout sessions at that Aquatic Invaders Summit, got a lot of information on what could be tracked and what would be most important to track, and developed the metrics template. So knowing that every county is operating uniquely, and that we still wanted to develop something that would have a menu of metrics that people could pick and choose from. We wanted them to be important and common amongst a majority of counties. We wanted them to be flexible and voluntary, as the statute states. There's not a lot in statute that says what you can or can't do with the funds besides use them to prevent the introduction and limit the spread of aquatic invasive species at all access points within the county. And we also wanted those metrics to be consistent for statewide reporting. And we wanted to have space for stories and photos. We want them to be useful and not overly burdensome for program managers to complete. Have a simple layout that creates a nice, easy, public-facing report of accomplishments. We also want it to be able to evolve over time. So in 2017, we created this 5+ page document with a lot of tables, a lot of spaces for numbers, and a lot of spaces for descriptions, and a lot of information in there. And over the years, been 5 years now, we've kind of evolved it into this more straightforward, simple template with fewer numbers, but numbers that everyone could kind of agree on to track. And it includes places for numbers as well as places for stories. So it did evolve over time and will continue to, because at the end of this presentation, we'd like to know, how we can improve it for this year. So in the metrics template, there's a program summary in numbers about all of these different categories listed here. Doug will go through the numbers from 2022 in a little bit. And it also has space again for that program summary in words. Talks about spending, your plans for the next year, highlights on success stories, multi-county collaborations, and reports and products, as well as lots of photos. So this is an example of a completed metrics template by Dakota County in 2021. And you can see they filled it out with all the numbers that they felt they wanted to included a program spending summary, a success story, links to reports and products, and some photos of some new AIS activities they accomplished that year. So this nice template turns into a nice little report that can be shared with stakeholders, with leadership, with anyone interested in what your county has been up to over the last year for aquatic invasive species prevention and management. And what we do with those numbers from the DNR perspective is we create kind of a one-pager with just the numbers. You'll see on the left side of the slide there, just the numbers from all the metrics that were submitted every year to kind of highlight those statewide impact that these funds are having across many different activities related to aquatic invasive species prevention and management. We also create a more comprehensive summary that includes those numbers and even more numbers, as well as some stories and photos to really show what's being done on the ground with these funds. So that's kind of how all the metrics work together. And we are looking forward to hearing. So we have the numbers, preliminary numbers from 2022. We also summarized the numbers since 2019. So Doug's gonna run through those numbers for us. So I'll go to the next slide, Doug, and you just let me know when I need to move on to the next one.
Great, Tina, thank you. Oh, you've done a nice job of setting the stage here. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everything will work here fine. I just got a black screen a little while ago, and that's why I was gone for a bit. So sorry I missed the rest of Justin's presentation. So now we've combined the output for the metrics from all of your terrific and hard work from 2022. Everything that you've been waiting for, we've tallied them up, and voila, here's the numbers compared to the last 3 years. Our purpose in highlighting these numbers is not necessarily to track and compare the metrics from year to year, because that's really not that meaningful. Our purpose is to showcase the total impact of your effort for each year. It is natural to expect that the numbers will vary from year to year for a variety of causes. That's because the programming within the counties are ever evolving. There's been COVID restrictions, watercraft inspection, hire issues, and county turnover staff. And also, as I'm finding out, what's being reported by the counties varies a bit from year to year and from county to county. And there's counties that have very large programs while others are small. So it just takes 1 or 2 counties to change up what they're reporting to really sway the metrics. But if you want to see the numbers increase, please consider submitting your metrics report for 2023. So let's take a few minutes to look at your accomplishments for 2022. For 2022, for people and partnerships supported, there were 61 counties that participated. 7.8 million was invested. There was a good number of conservation groups, businesses, and local governments. It's really nice to see that there's been a growth, an apparent growth in reaching out to schools and youth organizations. The numbers are going up, as shown here. I think that's all we want to say about that one. We'll move on to the next slide. For communities engaged in 2022, there were nearly 39,000 that were educated, over 13,000 youth that were educated. Commitments through the pledge program was just started in June of last year. We'd like to certainly like to see those numbers increase in 2023. And there's the total cost for the counties in terms of AIS advertising statewide. Next slide. So in terms of funds distributed, contributed and leveraged in 2022, 29 counties distributed grants for a total of $1.9 million to 200 organizations, which levered additional funds, essentially turning that $10 million into $11.3 million, which is pretty exciting. And that came from 159 organizations. For watercraft inspection programs, these metrics only include a subset of all local government inspection programs, and of those reporting, 36 counties conducted programs which hired a total of 571 inspectors who conducted over 300,000 inspections at over 700 accesses on 582 water bodies using 39 decon units that performed almost nearly 2,000 decons. So based on what we're seeing for 2022, it appears that these metrics are more like that maybe of 2019 pre-COVID. So this might be sort of the new normal. In terms of enforcement, 16 counties reported with over 100 trained and enforcing officers who contacted nearly 3,000 boaters. It would be nice to see more county enforcement support, but we realize that working with the local enforcement can be a challenge. I'm not sure why the metrics are a bit down in 22. If there was revenge boating, like we've been hearing, and like revenge travel in like what we saw in 2022, we'd expect the boater contact maybe metric to be a little bit higher, but that's total speculation. In terms of monitoring, 43 counties reported monitoring, 575 lakes and rivers. There was significant monitoring and early detection by county staff and volunteers for zebra mussel, spiny water fleas, starry stonewort, and other aquatic invasive species. And looking at the metrics then for 2020 and 2021, there seems to be more emphasis on monitoring and early detection, probably due to COVID restrictions and maybe less outreach during public events, since many of the public events were canceled. So I guess that's kind of a point of discussion we'd like to learn more about. If it was planned or if it just happened, what was the case and why those numbers maybe came down a little bit. For new infestation response planning, 11 counties reported having response plans for the last 3 years. No funds were spent on responses is probably a good thing. In 2022, 10 responses were coordinated with DNR, other counties, and other organizations. And last, for invasive aquatic plant management and control, another AIS, 25 counties reported effort at a cost of nearly $700,000 for management and control on 181 water bodies, which leveraged another $579,000, nearly doubling the prevention aid investment. And that was through 122 partnerships, which appeared to be trending up. And lastly, there's biocontrol per blue stripe that was conducted at 40 sites.
All right.
So I'll turn it back over to Tina.
Yeah, so lots of numbers thrown at you there, but we'll be creating a summary of all that. Again, that kind of one pager with all the numbers and the more comprehensive document with pictures and stories and even more numbers. So you still have a chance to submit your metrics from 2022 if you get them to us. So send them along if you're still working on them. I know there's a couple of you out there. So I think what I'm going to try is, again, another poll for those that would complete these metrics. I will post that and see how that goes. So this has 5 questions for you to answer. And so I'll let you answer that while we talk about how we can make these metrics better, because we want them to be formatted and include information that is most useful to the counties, to you on the ground that are working and doing this work every single day, and make it useful for you for planning and for reporting to your stakeholders, your leadership, and others that are interested in your programming, and potentially elevating this and moving it in another direction too, to see You know, talking about those SMART goals that Chelsea and Justin also mentioned. How can we turn some of these metrics into SMART goals in the future? So really excited to hear what people think, and we'll go from there. So thoughts on the metrics template in general? Anyone want to chime in on that? Emily says in the chat that the metrics template, she likes it because it's highly customizable. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to be flexible because every county is unique in how they're getting these done. And the metrics are not meant to replace anything that you're already doing on reporting or budgeting or anything like that, but they definitely could if that's something you want to utilize it for. We know that every county kind of tracks their budget a little bit differently. So that's been one of the biggest challenges in kind of comparing county to county, is that everyone tracks their budget just a little bit differently. So it's kind of hard to compare statewide, but we can still get those total statewide numbers. Not seeing the results of the poll, so I'm going to try to pull those up. Doug, you want to read that comment that just came in?
There, up on the mic button, yes. Justin said, I should have mentioned we use metrics template to guide our tactics and yearly work plans, and it makes it easier to fill out at the end of the year or make it one of your goals. Susanna says, completing the template helps us create our other county fact sheets and annual reporting, exclamation point. It's another thing that we certainly encourage. Jacob says, I use mine to update my task force for our 1 year recap. A bunch of those are getting thumbs up. Let's see. Emily says we put the metrics template out on the county website, so it's nice to point out folks, to point folks to it and to show how we spend the money. Big smile. Amanda from Cook County says commissioners really enjoyed this once a year document.
Yeah, that's a good point, Amanda. And others are using this to share with their leadership on their accomplishments and how that has gone, and if it's a useful tool in that respect as well. So we want it to be multifaceted. Any challenges in filling out these metrics? No, just super easy to use.
If so, then we've hit our sweet spot.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Justin.
Says, yeah, I never know what items to put in the budget or where to put on the budget. Bill says the more you use it, the easier it is to complete. Ariana says the budget breakdown I know has been very messy for us.
Okay. Is there ways that we can improve that section of the metrics to make it easier? Just leave it blank and let you put whatever you want in there? Is that a better way to approach that section?
I'm tired of typing. Can I break in?
Yeah.
So I was thinking just like a 15-minute in the beginning of the year of this is, if you have this kind of education, then I would put it under education. If you had this type of education at a boat launch, that would probably go more under inspector. And just, I think my concern is that we're all on the same page and reporting the same thing. I don't doubt that we're all reporting the total correct. It's that what do you put under inspectors that I put under education?
Yeah, that would be great. So the budget category section in the metrics does have a little section that says describe what you've put here. So instead of just saying watercraft inspection, you could elaborate as to what exactly those costs represent and be a little bit more specific. That would be really helpful. Thanks, Justin.
A couple other comments in the chat. Amanda says, I'm going to share this with my Wisconsin DNR folks as we try to improve our version of the prevention aid programming. This is a great template.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can get my thing to slide here. Russ says basic budget with additional details we can edit under each item.
Yep, exactly. So the template again is flexible. You can add and move and adjust things as needed. Just whenever possible, keeping it consistent so Doug and I can enter those numbers into this master spreadsheet. So that's, I think we're finding a good balance there of consistency that is easy for Doug and I to track, but enough flexibility for your programs to just show all of the work you're doing throughout the year.
And it is a massive spreadsheet.
Amanda
added, I add and delete budget categories to fit my program. Perfect.
So I'll go through some of the poll results here. We've got 12% that have never completed the metrics. I encourage you to do so this year. We've got 15% that have done it once, 21% that has done it 2 or 3 times, and 50% that have done it 4 or 5 times. As far as, is the metrics template easy to use? 58% agree, 27% strongly agree. No one disagrees, so that's good to hear. The metrics template is flexible enough to fit my unique program. 33% said strongly agree, 45% said agree, and 21% said neither agree nor disagree. Again, no disagreements with that statement, which is good to hear. And the metric template contains the right amount of detail. I think that's the question. It kind of cut off, but oh yeah, sorry. The statement is the metrics template contains either too much detail, not enough detail, or just the right amount. And 94% said just the right amount. So that's good to hear as well. We are starting to add more things in as programs expand, such as controlling different invasive species beyond invasive aquatic plants, such as purple loosestrife and common carp, non-native Phragmites are some of the ones that are starting to pop up more commonly. So as the programs expand, we expand the metrics template. And the statewide summaries are useful to me. So 27% said they strongly agree, 39% agree, and 33% neither agree nor disagree. So with those statewide summaries, is there anything that Doug and I could change on those to make them more useful to you as program managers? All right.
You can either come off mic or enter it into the chat.
I did have a question. This is Dana.
Yeah.
On the budget category, so we have the county AIS prevention aid and then the local grants, which I always assume is the money that our prevention aid is giving out to our local AIS, but I'm wondering if everyone else uses that the same way. And then I'm like, does the money get counted twice? Is it thinking it's extra money coming in? That one always confuses me.
Yeah, so the intent of that one was to have the first column say what you spent as a county, so your direct spending. And then the second column is money you gave to associations or other organizations to do the work. And then the total should be a combination of those two. So it shouldn't be there shouldn't be duplicates in each of those columns, if that makes sense. And I tried to clarify that a little bit more every year, because that was something we added somewhat recently.
Thank you, that helps.
Okay. Anything we need to add to the template? Anything that you see as missing at all?
Yeah, you know, what we're trying to do is really cast the broadest net as we possibly can to capture all the good work that you're doing. So is there a metric that you are tracking at the county level that you know, the template doesn't include? Maybe you're reporting all of your metrics, and that's great. But like Tina emphasized, the programs are expanding. You may have set different metrics. Started out with a different sort of project that had different goals that a metric could be developed for. Might be common to other programs. So we've got a couple other comments here. Mariana says, if the budget breakdowns for the state summary were averaged by monitoring activities, that may help advocate for some of us moving to funding new initiatives. Not sure how useful that is to anyone else, though. Good point. Jacob says no suggested changes. Yep, I think that's all the comments in the chat right now.
All right. So another question then for people is, you know, how can some of these metrics be turned into those SMART goals that Justin and Chelsea were talking about earlier? I think a lot of them are just basic metrics that really showcase the statewide impact that are important to track, but there's definitely metrics in there that could be SMART goals. So you've filled this out 4 or 5 times now. Have you gone back and looked at what you accomplished in the past 3 years and compared that to what you might want to accomplish this year? And if not, that's okay, but another useful tool, another use for this tool.
Yeah, another thing too, you know, Tina and I are here to help you with the development of your plans and of your metrics. And my area of expertise is in program evaluation. And when it comes to strategic planning, it's all about alignment, aligning your strategies with your goals and along with your actions, and that's really important in terms of tracking. So if you do start taking a look at the state plan and start to develop different types of SMART goals, you know, we can help provide some guidance in how those come together and how they can be aligned.
I know these are a lot of questions to ask right before the lunch hour, so.
I'd just like to see some state goals. I think it'd just be helpful for you all, given the analysis that you've done now, to throw out some goals on the front end to say, you know, number of inspections or something, probably lowest hanging fruit. And then we can all put it together and see if we can help you meet that goal.
So one area that we haven't really captured a whole lot, and Tina and I have had some discussions about this, is are you doing any sort of evaluation like of your education efforts?
Mm-hmm.
So that for adults or youth, are you able to say that awareness has been increased. There's been an increase in understanding. There's been an increase in skill level, an increase in action. Those can be either quantifiable or qualitative in terms of reporting. And if so, would you like to see that in the metrics template? Jacob says in the chat, I like to use my past templates to see where we have been and establish new ideas moving forward. Highlights successes is what I'd like to look back on. Good. Good comment.
This is Chelsea. Going back to Justin's comment, didn't the invasive species program lay out some strategic planning goals or metrics recently? Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
In a way, we have,
Okay.
The Ecological and Water Resources Division has a strategic plan. One of the goals in the strategic plan is invasive species related. So to reduce the spread, prevent the introduction, and reduce the impacts of invasive species in Minnesota. So we do have some goals as an agency that we set, and those are SMART goals. They're things that we have control over, like being able to process and give out permits in a timely manner, or the number of invasive species trainings that we hold every year, or how many times we reach out to businesses that sell live organisms, are some of the example performance measures that the invasive species goal in our strategic plan is aiming to achieve.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, if anyone is interested in maybe evaluating more on the education side of things, I have developed a very quick questionnaire that has really 3 simple areas to gather information about participants. It's a post-event evaluation where you ask what the level was awareness before and after. So those are 2 different questions that then you can analyze. And then what will be your actions in the future before and after. So before the event and then after the end, and then the last section is a write-in where it's an open-ended question, is what you will do. And so it's a very simple but effective tool to be able to demonstrate whether or not your programming is doing what you hope it's going to do, and that is to emphasize prevention and compliance. If anybody is interested in using that tool, just feel free to reach out to me. I've been using it for years and it's been quite effective.
All right, any other last thoughts on strategic planning, metrics, measures, evaluation? I know that's a lot to cover, and each of you are managing your programs in different ways, and so hopefully you got some good nuggets out of today's workshop that you can go back and utilize. And as Doug and I and Justin and Chelsea have all mentioned, if you are interested in learning more about the process or things that we've talked about here today, feel free to reach out, and I can share some of those resources that were shared earlier as well, so that everyone has them on hand. So with that, any final thoughts or anything like that anyone has?
I'm just thinking of this now, Tina, but I was wondering if the group kind of measuring their temperature here, are you interested in learning more about program evaluation? That could be a subject of maybe a workshop next year.
Bill says yes.
I would expected that from you, Bill.
All right, program evaluation. Yeah, that can definitely be something we can dive into on and maybe talk about at some of our in-person workshops. Again, we'll be sending out an email later today on whether or not Chanhassen will happen tomorrow. But if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it will happen soon. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. We had almost 50 people, over 50 people here today to talk about strategic planning, which is really exciting to hear that you're all interested in this topic.
62.
So,
We had 62
oh,
at the high point.
62. Okay. Yep. Excellent. So we've got one more workshop coming up, and that is on next week. Remind me, Doug, what day is it on?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Thank you. Yes, next Tuesday at the 14th at 1 p.m. talking about monitoring, detection, and response. So hopefully you can all make it to that meeting as well. That will be our last of these kind of winter series of online workshops. And thank you again for everyone for participating here today, and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Amazing. We had 57 people at one point that all agreed.
Awesome.
When does that happen? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.